So we're on our third day now. Only thing to eat is elk meat. A group of wolves is slowly starting to narrow in on us. Oh, and we're live. Garrett and Nostrand, how you doing? Yeah, I'm doing great, man. I gotta say, it's an honor to finally be on your show. I'm a huge fan. Well, thank you. I'm a huge fan of yours, too. It's great to finally have you on. So, how about you tell the audience at home a little about yourself for those who still haven't heard of you? Okay, yeah, so I'm a student right now at San Diego State University. San Diego's a beautiful city. You know, it's illegal to eat oranges in a bathtub in San Diego. No, I actually didn't know that. Yeah, they passed the law in 1920 because they thought that the citric acid in the orange juice would mix with the bath oils, create some sort of explosion. It doesn't, though. I sit in the deprivation tank all the time and eat oranges. It's truly incredible. It's like your whole life is slipping away and you can view the entire universe in your mind. And you're seeing these different geometric shapes and colors, but they're not really colors, they're really emotions. And you're seeing all of this as a 10-year-old in Pop Warner who's eating oranges at halftime. It's amazing. Wow, that sounds incredible. So you're a fake news expert. Yes, that's correct. What's your opinion on fake news then? One of my kid's friends' dad, Frank, and let me tell you, this guy's a moron. I love him, but he's a moron. Don't you think he might hear this? He needs help still tying his shoes. 40-year-old man. I love him dearly. One of my best friends. But he's an idiot, like I said. So he was telling me that he doesn't think fake news is much of a problem. He says it's something coming naturally with social media, and you know, we're sharing it ironically, like as a joke, but no one's really believing it. So what are your thoughts on that? Well, I believe that fake news is a huge issue. When you look at the fuel power behind some of these fake news stories, like take Pizzagate for example. There's obviously fake news story about Hillary Clinton and other high-ranking Democrats running a child sex slave ring from the basement of a pizza shop. And some guy runs into the restaurant with a gun while there are customers inside threatening the workers to show him the basement. And that is all started because some bizarre story with no evidential backing that was picked up by Alex Jones of InfoWars, who's receiving over 10 million monthly viewers to hear about this fake news stories that he puts up. Oh, no way. I'm longtime friends with Alex. You don't say. So, what makes fake news an issue and a disservice to democracy is obviously safety concerns, like that in Pizzagate. But those cases are rare. What really worries me is how we take fake news stories we hear about and use them to form opinions on people based off these stories. And if we find out later that they're fake, we pretty much just keep those same opinions. Right. Now, why do you think we do this? Well, there's actually a concept called confirmation bias. And actually, what confirmation bias is our brains have an instinctive inclination to believe what we want to believe. And there's actually a great PBS Above the Noise episode on this topic. I think it's called Why Do Our Brains Love Fake News? Young Jamie, can you do a double check on that for us? Yeah, so PBS Above the Noise, Why Do Our Brains Love Fake News? And I encourage everyone to go watch this after this podcast, but I'll break down the topic for you for the sake of your podcast. Please do. So we have something engraved in us naturally that wants us to believe whatever the person on our team says and to be against whatever the person on the other team is saying. So that's why when, let's say, Trump, for example, is saying we need to start spending more money on military defense because we have growing threats from the Middle East or something like that. A Trump supporter is more than likely going to support that idea and start talking about how much of a threat the Middle East is and how we're not supporting our military enough and just stuff like that. Meanwhile, if Hillary or let's say Obama would have said the same thing, then that same Trump supporter would have been arguing against it, saying we're spending too much on the government and saying we don't need to be spending more of our taxes on the Middle East, something like that. So this isn't a real life example, but you get the point of what I'm trying to say. Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and they've actually done studies on this concept by looking at brainwaves of participants while they listen to the candidate of each party flip-flop their opinion, basically. And not surprisingly, the participants let the candidate on their own party off the hook while they pass more judgment onto the candidate of the other party. Wow, that's amazing. But the really interesting part of the study was, while they were listening to the participant of their own party, participants were actively using the part of their brain, the orbital cortex, which processes emotion. Meanwhile, the part of their brain that processes reasoning, the prefrontal cortex was being inactive, and it was vice versa for the other candidate. We're just advanced monkeys, man. Have you seen Brock Lesnar before? Yeah, he's incredible. He's hardly human. Like, look at that. That's more of a gorilla than a human. He could kill me in 2 seconds if he wanted to. There's nothing I could do. So how do you think confirmation bias and everything you just talked about is affecting our election and our current political system? Well, I think the biggest impact it's having on us politically is driving a divide between our citizens. When you think about it, fake news sites are writing these stories with the intention of making a certain side angry with the other side because it's targeting our orbital cortex and making us think with emotion. So when you see fake news stories like Pizzagate, they're trying to quite literally paint Hillary and other Democrats as the devil. So when you're a conservative buying into the stories you view of Democratic supporters like this, you see them as people who are supporting alleged child murderer, and the same can be said as the other side. Some Democrats view Republicans as being neo-Nazis for the same reason and supporting those type of people. So fake news has now created a huge divide in our country between the blue team and the red team, and created actual hate between the two sides instead of just a political difference of opinion. Yeah, it's really a terrifying thought, and you're starting to see it already with some of these Trump rallies and crazy lunatics outside with tiki torches, these morons. Yeah, and really what this is going to cause for each side is to be more and more inclined to vote for a more extremist leader to try and piss off the other side as much as they can. And that's really what concerns me. So what do you think we need to do to stop fake news? Or is there anything that we can do? Well, yeah, I don't think it's a lost cause. I think there are some things we can do that will help. But first off, let me start by telling you what I think we shouldn't do. Okay? I think government intervention needs to be avoided at all costs. I think that's first and foremost the biggest mistake we can make. And this government intervention approach is starting to make waves across the world. Not in America yet, thankfully, but in Singapore, there's actually a parliamentary committee that has suggested legislation that would make social media groups have to find fake news sources on their sites, and then they would then have to punish those responsible for the sources. What makes this such a slippery slope regarding the First Amendment is that if the government is always going to be one-sided depending on who's in office. So let's say Trump has the power to shut down fake news sites. And let's say CNN just published a story about him with some details that were perhaps misrepresented, maybe a little wrong. Well, Trump decides CNN is a site that has published too many articles that turned out to be fake news. So he bans them from Facebook, from Twitter, says they're a fake news site. Well, now he's effectively eliminated one of the biggest liberal news sites in the world and has put a magnifying glass on other reporters that want to talk negatively about him. So he shifted the playing field, basically, of what you can and can't report on. And the same can happen with the other side, too. Yeah, I think that's a real issue that some people overlook when it comes to shutting down fake news sites. The line for what's fake news and what's not can get real blurry at times, and that decision is really resting on who's in charge and what their agenda is. Exactly. So who do you suppose could solve this issue then? Well, I think social media sites themselves should be the ones that are in charge of this. So you would give social media sites the power to shut down certain accounts that they thought were fake news. Well, not exactly. I personally don't think any account should ever get shut down. I think it's everyone's freedom of speech to be able to tweet and post what they want, but if you don't want to see it, you can simply block them. What I think social media sites should do instead is should verify media sources that are trustworthy and be able to label them as trustworthy. And what would they need to be verified? Yeah, so if you look at Nigeria, this type of thing is actually already happening. British nonprofit groups have set up committees ahead of the Nigerian elections next year, and their job is to go through different social media sites and fact-check articles from these different sources, and then they give them a rating based on trustworthiness that they then share with the people so that they're able to easily check how trustworthy the source is. So what I propose in America is that we set up a system similar with Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, any social media site. And basically, they have all their own independent committees that could go through news sources on these sites and fact-check them, and if they pass a certain criteria, it would put a verified sort of check mark on their site, like Twitter and Instagram do with famous people. Well, famous people and minor league baseball players with 250 followers. Right. But that way, new accounts can register themselves as news sites, And once they reach a certain large enough following, let's say 10,000 followers, they can send a request for the committee to take a look at their account and decide whether they're trustworthy enough to be verified. And you think this will solve our issue with fake news? I think it will help, absolutely. Well, I'm with you, man. Garrett, it was great talking to you. We just did like 4 hours there. Well, thank you for having me. It was great to finally be able to do this, and that's crazy. It felt like it couldn't have been more than 15 minutes. I know, that felt like it flew by. Well, I'm glad it finally worked out. I gotta head out. I've got a 13-mile hike with my dog to get to. After that, I'm doing a couple 3-hour podcasts with Elon Musk and that crazy guy from Blink-182. Then I gotta go pick up my kids from school. I've got like 9 sets at the Comedy Store later tonight. If you want to swing by, feel free. All right, sounds good. I might have to take you up on that. Sounds like you got quite the day ahead of you. Yeah, but I've got this caveman coffee to help me through it. 900 milligrams of caffeine. Take 4 of these to get out of bed. It's like a caveman actually smacked you in the face with a club. Wakes you right up. That sounds extremely unhealthy. No, it's fine. It's keto. Well, thank you for having me on. My pleasure. Garrett, ladies and gentlemen. Bye.